r/AskReddit. Historians of Reddit, what is one cool history fact that people barely know about? In World War II, the Allies were about to invade Sicily and Hitler knew it. So in order to keep Hitler from stationing all available troops on Sicily to fight off an invasion, the British hatched a plan to fit a dead body with a British Royal Marines uniform and with letters that said that the Allies were going to invade Greece and that they were using Sicily as a decoy. This was called Operation Mincemeat. They then dropped the body off the coast of Spain, which was closely aligned with Germany. The Spanish found the body and gave the Germans the letters. The Germans thought that the body was that of an actual Royal Marines officer, read the letters, and concentrated on defending Greece instead of Sicily. The Allies then successfully invaded Sicily in part because Hitler took the bait, and the invasion was really important because it resulted in Italy being knocked out of the war. A year later, when the Allies were preparing for D-Day, real plans for D-Day fell into German hands in a similar fashion on accident, but the Germans thought they were fake because of how they had been fooled in Operation Mincemeat. I'm from the States, so I don't know how well this story is known in Britain, but it's not well known here. Not sure how known this is, but I find it to be a cool story. During the Second World War, a Polish tour bought a brown bear while traveling through Iran. During the Battle of Monte Cassino, in Italy, the bear was seen helping move crates of ammunition. The bear was called Wojtek and made a private in the Polish army. Even 60 years after his death, George Washington was such a popular American president that when freed and given the opportunity to choose their surnames, more African American slaves chose the last name of Washington than Lincoln. Edit, 82 to 94% of all Washingtons listed in the 1880 to 1930 censuses were black. Louis XIV's court at Versailles had very few toilets despite accommodating thousands of people. As a result, many courtiers would relieve themselves in corners and corridors during parties and leave it for the servants to clear up. Often richer guests bribed servants to bring them chamber pots, but there simply weren't enough. Combine this with a large number of pets who weren't house-trained, it's no surprise that foreign dignitaries considered Versailles the filthiest palace in the world. Eventually the problem became acute enough that Louis ordered the servants to clean the corridors of feces at least once a week. Rosa Parks was a plant. A 16-year-old pregnant girl named Claudette Colvin refused to give up her seat months before Rosa Parks did. In fact, she knew Rosa Parks personally. The problem was that an underage pregnant girl who resisted arrest violently, she scratched one of the officers who was removing her from the bus, was a hard sell for the face of a civil rights movement. The case went to trial, and MLK and company supported her as much as they could, but they didn't try to get it national attention. Instead they simply recreated the scenario with Rosa Parks, a respectable member of society who was cool and calm when getting arrested. In World War II, the Soviets had anti-tank dogs. They were fitted with a bomb and a trigger to go off when the dog was under the tank. Trouble was, they trained the dogs using Soviet tanks, which sound different from German tanks, so the dogs all went for the wrong tanks. A Parisian was given a small fine for getting medieval on his wife. Paris Baker on reality had a major marital problem. His wife was desperate to be faithful, but just couldn't help herself. She had 3 affairs in as many months before he decided that something must be done. He visited a museum and came out with sketches of medieval chastity belts. These he gave to a man who made false arms and legs for veterans of the First World War, asking him to create a secure means of keeping Madame Lydia from consummating her infidelities. He brought his wife to the final fitting, and she pronounced herself satisfied with the comfort of the velvet-covered steel contraption and joked with her husband that he mustn't lose the key. Some time later one of her former lovers came to visit. One thing led to another and he saw the apparatus she was wearing. He went straight to the police, and Mr. Lydia appeared in court on charges of cruelty. Although Mrs. Lydia testified that she found it impossible to be faithful, the judge gave the baker a 3-month suspended sentence and a 50-franc fine. Ancient Greek and Roman statues only look plain to us because the paint has worn off. They were originally painted in bright colors. and we now know how to find out which colors, by careful study under various lights. Slightly more recent, for example Renaissance, sculptures were never painted, possibly because their sculptors never knew that the works they were emulating had ever been colorful. If they had known, the practice would probably have continued. One of the largest fault lines in America isn't in California, but in Missouri. The New Madrid fault triggered a series of earthquakes in the area in 1811 to 1812 that not only destroyed homes, livestock, and natural habitat, but created a crater that became Real Foot Lake. In December 1990, residents in the New Madrid area and surrounding counties were warned about a possible earthquake happening that would destroy the area. School was cancelled, businesses closed for the day, and some people evacuated. Nothing happened. BuzzFeed, though not the best source, actually has a great article on this craze, including news clippings from the time. Full disclosure, I lived in southeast Missouri at the time, and my own parents were in a state of preparedness for the earthquake that never happened. There was a small quake a few months before that, but not of the scale that the later warnings were about. The New Madrid fault still occasionally has minor earthquakes, and there are still studies that say there is chance it could cause a quake that could destroy parts of Missouri and the surrounding states. I think it's starting to become a bit more well known, but JFK was high for most of his presidency. He had some debilitating health conditions but needed to project an image of health and strength, so he took lots of heavy drugs. In fact, his doctor was known as Dr. Feelgood. Catherine the Great of Russia was born in Germany, then married the Queen of Russia's adopted son, the Duke of Holstein, Peter, and then overthrew her husband to become empress. She became one of the best Russian rulers of all time, while Peter returned to Holstein, only to die in a drunken brawl a few weeks later. Mine is Lafayette, who believed in liberty so much he came to help out the Americans during our revolution on his own dime and helped immensely in securing naval support and money from France, which were crucial for our winning the war. He returned to America on a farewell tour as an old man and was given a hero's welcome as one of the last surviving heroes of the revolution. That's why so many streets and counties are named for him today. He even brought back American soil for his tomb to be buried in. He truly loved America and saw it as a beacon of hope for Europe. During World War I, when France was overrun by the Germans and desperate for help, our General Pershing finally arrived in Paris after years of occupation, and he went straight to Lafayette's tomb. He said, "Lafayette, we are here." Not really a fact per se, but this is one of my favorite historical stories. So Alexander the Great goes to see this horse with his dad, King Philip II, and the thing is just a fucking beast. In written accounts the horse, named Bucephalus, was massive and completely untamed. The dude who owned Bucephalus told Philip that he wanted basically a shit ton of money for the horse. Alexander, who was probably a teenager at this time, made a wager. He said he would try to tame the beast, and if he couldn't, they would pay the money. See, what Philip and the owner didn't realize, but Alexander did, was that the poor horse's own shadow was spooking him. So Alex walks up to the animal, turns it toward the sun so it could no longer see the shadow that distressed it so, and hopped on like the bad motherfucker he was. Bucephalus was the horse that Alexander rode into most of his battles. Japan bombed Australia during World War II. In the initial raid on Darwin, the 19th of February 1942, they dropped more bombs than on Pearl Harbor, although loss of life was far lower. They conducted 100 raids on northern Australia over the next 2 years. My uncle flew Spitfires out of Darwin during that period. There are a lot of fucking coincidences in history that dictated the future of the world or just plain crazy. The two storms that stopped Japan from being invaded by Mongols, the whole debacle with Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the cosmic event that convinced Constantine to make Christianity as the official religion of Rome, Thomas Jefferson and John Adams dying hours apart from each other, the only two cars in Ohio in 1895 crashing into each other, Stalin, Hitler and Franz Joseph all living within a block of each other in Vienna before World War I, Mark Twain both being born and dying on the passing of Halley's Comet. Everyone knows of the Salem witch trials, but not that many people know that around the same time they prosecuted and burned werewolves in Europe. One famous case was Peter Stump, who admitted to being a werewolf using a belt to turn into a werewolf and eat children. He was also accused of having sex with his daughter. Thank you for watching this video, and don't forget to like, comment and subscribe for more.